Oh, customers don't. I'll do it.
Even talking about Jessica fix it, so.
Right.
If you're gonna make a mistake, now's the time to make a
Oh, if
mistake.
you
Now's the
put it
time
like
to
that,
do
yeah, sure.
Now's the time to make a mistake.
I wouldn't want to make a mistake
Yeah.
with just its customs phones, you know. It's just,
Yeah.
All right,
what
so
is this? Mats?
Magnetic screw mats.
Yeah, that's smart.
this one is a 6 Plus that we just booted it up. It took a long time to boot up.
Did it come up?
Yeah, it did, and it had no touch whatsoever. So if it's a 6 Plus, and the first time you ever saw one of these back a couple years ago, that came in with no touch, what would you do?
Replace the screen.
Okay,
Back
rule number
in the
one.
day.
Yeah, so rule number one, we did that.
Yeah.
No touch, board level, no touch. What do you do?
Visual?
I mean, not visual, great idea. No water damage,
I'll
no
tell them
nothing.
touch disease and I can't do it. See you later.
So back in time before there was such a thing as touch, the first ever case ever walked in the door.
Oh man.
Right,
4 or
so
5
that's
screens.
Put his
Oh,
screen.
I
We'll put an OEM screen on it.
Okay, you did
Okay.
rule number one.
Right,
That's
right.
done.
The
That's
motherboard
all
shot.
done before it gets here.
Motherboard shot, we'll say, and then we'll just leave. That's
Bye
it.
bye, London.
Right? No. Alright, I need you guys to
For
tell
us,
me
that's what
how to
we do now.
troubleshoot a phone with a system problem called no touch, and it's a 6 Plus.
Oh, okay.
Start from the connector on.
Yes! There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, we start from the connector and do what?
So it's always start from the connector. Anything you
And trace it back.
Yeah.
Alright, so I would look at the connector on the schematic, and what am I trying to figure out? Why am I looking at the connector?
Whatever's related with touch.
Yeah.
So look up the schematic.
So let's do that.
Connector to see if it's got power,
See where it goes.
so it can have a touch button.
Yeah.
Now you go back.
It's gonna
and
probably end up with no touch IC.
you go to the mother.
So let's do that. This is the world's first case of touch disease, but we don't know that because it's the first one
go
ever.
backwards. You know, and then you just do it.
All right, so the touch connectors, J2401. And so if the complaint is no touch, we verified that it's definitely no touch, what do? We're going to try to figure it out. All right, so here's the connector. How does touch work? What are these?
Everything is touch.
Yeah,
Sometimes the touch
are
comes
these power or data?
Data.
These are all data. Maybe this is power. I don't know. Something else is a little bit weird, but these are all really, really similar to each other, right? So let's diode mode in the connector. Guess what? Everything is the same as a normal one. So that's not it. So then what do we think? If we don't pick up any short or open, then what's the problem?
Pick up short or open.
I would trace the power line.
All right, so, okay, but let's just think. If I don't pick up any short or open in the connector for my system, then if the problem is not short, not open,
It's
Right,
not
I
there. Like, is it not?
yeah, what's the phrasing that we've been using all week to describe that? If you have a problem that's not short or not open,
It's a chip problem, not a.
It's
Brain dead.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's the big guy
The man
upstairs.
upstairs.
Yeah.
So we go upstairs.
guy upstairs not doing his job. Right.
Mm.
So then that means the same thing. It's a chip problem. You know, it's something back here. The output is missing because something up here is not working. So we gotta find. Well, who's the guy upstairs? How do we find out? How do we get from here
follow
to who we should be looking at? All right. So let's just follow any of these. We could follow power or any. You know, these are all kind of the same. We would ultimately follow them all because, you know, there might be 2 or 3 different chips that contribute to touch. I don't know. So we're going to have to start following them. So let's just pick this first one here. Just start learning. We're going to research now. We're researching our system. So we're going to follow this one and see where does it go. All right, that one goes to a chip. Here's a chip. Does it go
There's a lot of
anywhere
touch.
else? No, it doesn't. All right, it goes to a chip whose name is Mason. All right, we could go back and we could do the same thing with any of these. Let's see what happens if we pick this one here.
But there was a lot of more you were saying touch. So how we not-
Yeah, so we'll say everything here looks like it's related to touch. This is
Yeah.
where we plug in the digitizer. All right, so that one goes through a resistor. We could make sure that that guy's on there, but if it's not diode mode open, we probably don't have a short or open. All All right, and that has, you know, kind of taken us over here to this same page. I'm pretty sure this is somewhere on this page. Where is it? Yeah, somewhere on this page is, I think it's like this are those lines, but we're still back at this same chip, Mason.
You can see there are so many connections. There are also.
All right, now what about this? Are these the same ones that go out to the connector?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the, you know, it looks like if we were gonna make like, hey, let's get a piece of paper and just kind of draw out how touch would work. What would it look like?
Is that like rows on the screen?
That's
where all
what
those numbers are?
that's the question that
It's
I
like
usually
up and down,
ask
left and
next.
right?
I would say, hey John, if I took a connector and I just took pin 31 and I just like tweezered it out so it's
I'll put
missing,
like one row.
yeah, so you'd have a dead line of touch, right?
Yeah.
So that's all looks like, you know, we're gonna guess that that's making a grid. And so if we have no touch at all, then, you know, there's something more like global than just one of those being out, right? So let's still kind of cover this skill. I'm gonna go right here real quick. This is generally something I'm gonna add. So we could like kind of get our own piece of paper, and what do we know so far? We would say, I know you guys can't really see this, but you can come along and look later. What do we know so far? How does touch work? Touch. We know there's a connector,
Going to the Mason
and
chip.
we know that most of these lines go to some chip called Mason.
Yep.
And that's all we know right now, right? Okay, so we can kind of like, was there anything in between here? No. So this is kind of helpful, I think, to sort of visualize and kind of put all this stuff together. Like make yourself a little, you know, cheesy
Like the
diagram.
translator. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the goal for me, for you guys, is for you to be a translator of the schematic. You know, there's lots of people that do that professionally. Please row sites that like, you know, there's no reason that you need to have somebody else deduce this for you because no one knows. We're all just doing experiments and guessing. All right, so then let's go from here to Mason. All right, so do you think that you would have a global loss of touch if Mason wasn't working?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if these aren't short or open, maybe Mason is just not doing it.
He's fucked up.
He's fucked up. He's just not listening. He's just not, it's like he's not there, right?
His name is Mason. It sounds fucked up.
Yeah. So then so now this is how we evaluate. If not short or open, guy upstairs is not doing his job. Who is the guy upstairs? Mason. All right, what does it take for Mason to do his job? What does he need?
Power.
Yes. All right, so start there, and there's going to be power, data, and you know he's going to have himself be not fucked up, right? So is he plugged into the wall? That's how I asked. Does he have power? So how do you think Mason gets power?
From a
Right
cups on
from the
top.
power lines.
These guys, right? Okay, so then we could kind of question these guys. So this guy, PP1V8. This is a brainstem rail, and never 1V8 always. So if 1V8 is not there, then you have a bigger fish to fry than no touch. It's kind of like VCC main. Right, but what about these guys? Yeah, so so these are some kind of power lines. Now we'll focus here. How could this line fail? Same three things. It could be
Short.
or
Open.
the guy that makes him is taking a nap, right? So the same thing. How do we ask, are you short or open?
Test the caps.
Yes, diode mode. Could we stick a probe right here? Red, purple, ground. C24 beep, and it is.
Good to go.
Yeah, it's either. Let's say it's 0. What does that mean? Normal, by the way, is 0.5. So if it's 0, what does that mean?
Sure.
Yes, diode mode is low. That line is short. All right, great. We got a problem. We got a short power line into Mason. That's why we don't have touch. Then how would we solve the problem? Why is it short? What are the possibilities? Not yet. What are the possibilities? Any
Thing on
Anything
that
along
line.
cap
could be.
or chip. Right? Does this go somewhere else? Let's find out. There's a cap, so any cap or chip. Oh, here we go again. This is another cap. And what's this? Oh, a chip.
Yeah, chestnut.
All right. Oh, it is. It's my buddy Chestnut. So Chestnut, let's look at Chestnut for a second. Is our touch power line an input or an output of Chestnut? It's an output. So if PP5V7 is not short and it's not open, it doesn't really have a way to become open other than the chip being not there, then guy upstairs not doing it, we would say, well, what about Chestnut? Is Chestnut working? Right? Okay, so if we go back to Mason, here's Mason, and we wanted to ask, all right, how can I confirm that Mason itself is getting power? First, I can do the diode mode test to say, are those power lines short or open? You guys understand that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if diode mode says they're normal? Are you sure that Chestnut is actually making 5V7?
You could do a voltage test.
We need to do a voltage test, yes. So that's when we would go to the voltage test to confirm. If we don't happen to pick up short or open, then we could do a voltage test. Or you could say, I'm just going to go straight to the voltage test and make sure that I'm getting 5V7 there. Because if you get 5.7 on a voltage test, and how does a voltage test work? V with a line over it, voltage. How would I do it? Would I have to put a screen on the device to do the voltage test? Close.
You would, yeah.
Why?
You need it needs to recognize.
Oh, engage the function, like you
Yeah.
said. You have to have the function engaged.
Where
to measure.
does PP5V7 come from? Who makes it?
Chestnut?
Chestnut. And what does Chestnut need to do his job?
Trigger
Power
data.
and...
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where does LCM to Chestnut Power Enable come from?
The screen being turned
The
on.
screen. So if you don't have a screen, what happens to Chestnut?
It won't.
It takes a day off. And what happens to your voltage at here? 0, right? So do I have to have a
Yes.
screen on? Yes. So we'll just make the general rule. Whenever you're going to do a voltage test, you set that whole phone up, camera, everything, so that you're sure that you're giving all the signals that it would need to produce the output. Right, so we set it all up. View the line of battery, turn it on, boot it, screen is awake. All right, now let's do the voltage test. What would the voltage test look like? Should I find C2414, find that side of it? Put one probe there, the other probe on ground. Result,
5.7.
5.7. What does that tell me?
He's good.
Generating
Chestnut
power.
is working, and I have voltage coming into Mason. So if I have a problem with Mason, he's got power coming to him, so it's not that. Right, then what else does Mason need to turn on? Well, I don't know about all this. This looks like it's starting to get complicated, but where is his enable?
You're right there. VCPHREFEN.
Like,
E2.
all right, that's a good vote. Maybe that needs to
There's
be,
a lot of
you
them.
know.
Number 14.
Yeah,
or
you're
L4.
right. There's this one looks like an enable, and then we saw on your no image phone that if something that is a reset is missing, then that also is if the chip doesn't work. So we've got all of these possibilities of problems that could make it not turned on. Now these are usually pretty unlikely failure points. Let's follow this one and say. Why is that hard to do? Let's see, where could this fail? Okay, there's a cap, that's a possibility. There's a resistor, that's a possibility. Oh, and it goes out here to the connector. Oh, that's a possibility. Okay. So we could do the same thing over here. We could diode mode each one of these enables and see whether or not we had a short or an open. Now it's really hard for us to do a voltage test on those, but we could, and we would be looking for like a 1 or a 0, but it would be less clear. Is it supposed to be a 1 or is it supposed to be, that would be a little bit less clear. But in any event, let's just say, I can't really easily tell if I have a problem on these enables. Let's just say, for now, let's just assume the enables are good. All right, so if the enables are good, and power is at this chip, and we still don't have touch, what's your next step?
Take off the Mason.
Right, to just say, well, maybe Mason got fucked up, right? It's cracked, it's damaged, it's dropped, it's not on there, whatever. So replace Mason. And if this was the very first case that ever walked in our door, it's exactly what we would do. Diode mode in the connector, no problem. Go back to Mason. Check Mason voltages. They're present. You're getting to 5.7. Okay. Replace Mason. And guess what would happen? Touch is working again. Touch would start working again if you did that. So then you would say, oh, great, we stopped that one. And then guy leaves. And the next guy comes in, and you're like, oh, I just saw the same thing 2 days ago. That's weird. Now, a lot of times on those early days, the touch disease would present with the flickering gray bars at the top.
Yes.
Which is like, what's up with that? That seems kind of weird with this whole story.
Kind of bend the phone a little bit.
Yeah, and you could then you kind of notice that like
I've
this was
slapped it too before.
sort of an intermittent, that you could get it to have touch, and then you could get it, you could tweak it, and touch will come back or go away. So it's like it sounds like a connection problem. So then, all right, now I know that replacing Mason kind of brought that first. Maybe Mason's not going bad. Maybe Mason's just not on there. So the next one comes in. What are you going to try?
Build a bridge.
Mason.
Like to see if you can reinforce the
Bridge to where? Remember, it's the second case you've ever seen in your whole life. What do you know? Mason's
second
on.
case.
No, that's Mason works, I'm gonna try Mason again.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say it sounds like Mason gets just dropped off. I'm just going to heat Mason up and tap it with it, see if it works.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I would try. That's what you would try next, right? You would try next because that's easy. Why not? And guess what? Touch starts working, and the guy leaves. And you're like, oh, this is gonna be great. It's so easy.
2 days later, though.
Two days later, the phone rings. It's that second guy, the one that you just reflowed. He said it's no touch again. God damn it.
Then he said like that, or fuck you guys ain't shit.
So then
That's what I get.
they don't talk like we're not in Detroit. So they're nice people on your phone. So that guy comes back in. Now what are you going to do?
Now
You're gonna replace it.
Again, you're going to replace it because now you've learned. All right, there's something up. I can't just heat it back up. That doesn't last. That's not really a repair. That's just kind of taking a post-it note, a post-it note like this. And if a post-it note falls on the ground, I can, let me just heat it back up a little bit. There, now it's fixed. Yeah, not really. So that's what reflow is like. It can maybe stick in, shit, So replace is get a new post-it note, right? So now you've got like you've had 10 people come in. 10th guy comes in. I got a 6+ with gray flickering bars and no touch. Do you even bother to diode mode in the connector this time? No, of course not. Yeah, because now this is a signature problem. It becomes a signature problem in the second case, right? So now you're going to go straight to, I don't need to do that anymore. I know what the problem has been all these other times. I'm going to go straight to replace Mason. And that's what
Reball Mason or just replace it?
you can do either one you want, So at the time, Mason was a $2 chip, so I would just replace it to not have to have the variable of whether or not reballing it was a problem. Replace Mason. Bad news. That first guy called back. It's not working again. God damn it. And the other guy, one of the other 10, another guy called back. It's not working again. The ones that you replaced. Well, fuck. Now, what can you do now? That sucks.
Now you could do the bridge. Because,
Bridge to where?
We won't know nothing about the bridge unless we knew about it,
Yeah. How are you going to, what bridge are you talking about?
Now I know about it.
Brooklyn?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm not buying that bridge. What would you do?
put a chip again on it?
Yeah, you could say, okay, I guess I fucked it up somehow and my technique was bad, so I'll give you another chip, and then he goes back out again. And then it's like the second time, and then you're just refunding him because you're like, I don't know what's up with that. So it takes a long time before people started to realize, hey, I pulled a pad on mine. It was an M1 pad. And the next guy says I pulled the M1 pad. Next guy says I pulled the M1 pad. Let's look at the M1 pad. What's the M1 pad? Where is the M1 pad? Anybody know? Let's find it. Let's see. Maybe we can get a little bit more clue on this problem and cut down on all this warranty issues. Where is M1?
Right there.
Right there.
Scan, reset.
Reset. Awesome. Now, if you take out a reset, would that take out the function of the whole chip?
Yes.
Yes, it's just like an enable. Enables and resets, you know, the whole chip doesn't work, you know, so it needs to have that. So if you get some kind of if M1 is broken off so that this LCM B-Sync line doesn't actually touch the chip anymore, then Mason stops working. And if the real problem is that at M1, where there's, you know, kind of floppy pad disease, then that makes sense. It starts to make sense of why this is an intermittent problem and why this problem kind of like, you know, comes and goes with heat, and why it is that on any of them, remember, this is a reset problem, that a lot of times they'll boot up and they'll have touch, and then when it goes to sleep, it doesn't wake up with touch because the problem is reset. So let's see. Here is M1, and M1 is...
Oh, wow.
All right, I can really see that if that got just loose, right there, the neck of the pad, if that just got creased, that it would be kind of spotty reception, you know, that the chip would sometimes work and sometimes not. And I can really see that twisting it might take the crease and kind of push it down. Now it's working again a little bit. And then I twist it again. Nope, now it's not working, right? Makes a lot of sense. All right, so if you have one that you pull the M1 pad on, what are you going to do? Can you just leave M1 off and just say, fuck it? No, because it is from the schematic. I know it's important. It's got to be there. It's a reset for the chip. So what do? If you've already pulled off that pad, what happens? You have to put a jumper. Now, what kind of jumper are you going to put? We could put a jumper from here, a long one that goes around here and tucks into the chip there. We could do that, and a lot of people did that. That's really long and awkward and weird.
Yeah.
Or, what if we just kind of tin up this little micro via and lay a little wire just like that? Would that do the same thing?
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely. All right, so let's do that. So we'll do the M1 jumper, the guy that come in with the M1 jumper. And we would notice that a lot of these ones that people were like, I was already in here, and now I'm back in here. On that second time, M1 would almost always come off. And so you were like, oh, it must have, you know, that's kind of what really made people realize that M1 was the problem. All right, so now let's do a jumper because M1 is missing, and then you put the chip on, and then what do you start to notice over a bunch of those? The ones that you did M1 jumper on
Never came back.
never come back. They never come back. So then what's the natural next step?
Mason M1 jumper.
Everybody gets an M1 jumper, whether you need it or not, right? And then we'll do the classic sort of proof experiment. That was done by Chris Long in Kentucky. Really, really clever idea, same as we did on the audio IC. He said, let me make the M1 jumper, but I'm going to leave it with a long tail, just for an experiment. Put the chip back on. Now, fire it up. Touch works. See what happens. Let's touch M1 to ground, dump the ones and zeros to ground, and guess what happened? No touch and flickering gray lines.
That's great.
Yeah. And that's really what made really focus all of that. That scan reset was that seems to be kind of like syncing display with the touch grid, you know, somehow. So now that ends up being a signature problem. But what I wanted you guys to get is that if you have, let's say you have an iPhone 5C and the complaint is no touch, should we lift up Mason and put an M1 jumper?
No.
No.
It's a different place.
It's a complete. A 5C doesn't get bendy defects, right? So a 5C with no touch, what do we do?
Start
Put a
with the
diode mode in the connector. And guess what? Diode mode in the connector, no problem. Then what do? Follow that back to your touch chip. And guess what? There's a touch chip. Its name is Sage. It's the Mason of the 5C. Sage. Alright, what do we ask Sage? First question.
Are you turning on?
Are you getting power, right? How do we do that?
Turn on the phone and
Yeah,
you know,
do a
connect it.
voltage test with the phone on. Guess what? 0 volts on 5V7.
0 volts.
0 volts on the 5V7. So now what do we do?
You follow that line back.
Follow that line. That goes to a chip called Chestnut.
See if there's also any any caps or any.
There are some caps. Yep. So
just make
what
sure they're good.
do I know is the line? Why do I have 0 volts? Should I check to see if the line is short?
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? It is short. Short to ground. 5V7 is short to ground. What do I do? Why is it
See
short
if
to
it's
ground?
a cap or a chip.
Caps or a chip.
Cap or a chip. They all look beautiful. So what do I do?
Gotta have series.
Hmm?
It's gotta be the guy switch. That's what's not doing the job.
No, I have a short.
So one of
Cap
the
or chip. They
underneath.
look beautiful. So
Did you test them?
we can test them. How can we test them? I
Yeah.
know they're short. I know the line is short.
Oh, so they're all short.
Right, yeah. The line is short. Why?
Follow the line back up to.
Alright, I see the whole line. Chestnut, couple of caps, Sage. That's it. Now what?
Underneath. One of the pads is shorted.
I don't, so I know the line is short. What do I do next? Short detection strategies.
Visual.
Visual.
They all look beautiful. Okay, heat. Alright, so how would I do that?
Turn the camera off. Freezing.
Okay, I could do all that stuff. I might have to inject a voltage into there to just see what gets on. Now there's Sage, Chestnut, and 2 caps. That's the whole line. Is it even worth it for me to try to do heat stuff? What's my other strategies? Visual, heat, what are my other strategies?
Signature problem.
Signature problems. If I asked around, somebody would probably tell me what it was, because it is a signature problem. But let's say I don't know anybody. What's my last choice?
Brute force.
Brute force, right? So if it was you, what would you do? You have cap, Mason, cap, Sage, and Chestnut. What would you do? Just take one of the beautiful caps off?
Yeah.
Guess what? Short's gone.
I might just get.
Or maybe it's
What's
still there.
up? Touch works.
Test the power signals on
Right. Okay. So my point is for you guys to exercise how you think about open-ended problems, so you can troubleshoot open-ended problems. Next one you get 5C with no touch. What do?
safety stuff on the connector.
From the connector. find out.
Not me. What do you do?
Check
Mark,
the cap.
5C just came in and no touch. What do you do?
Knock that fucking cap off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm okay.
I first get my multimeter and say, is that line short?
I boot it up and feel it with my fingers. Something hot up there? Yep, knock the cap off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's good. That's a good advice.
That's in about 3
I-
minutes. We'll do that for us.
I get the board and say, complaint is no touch. Flip it over, multimeter, short cap, shorted line, knock the cap off. You know, that's how it becomes quick, and that's the magic of how it is that you see me and Mark already knowing what's wrong with your phones, because most failures are signature problems. You know, because there's weak spots. Water goes in the same places. The certain caps fail, like that 5C cap fails. Certain caps never fail, and it kind of becomes patterns. All right. Mark, you want to do a touch IC demo? Great.
You want me to do it?
Huh? Alright. You know, it'll take a long time.
Forever.
It'll be a big chunk of time.
Forever.
Come on. So this is just like audio IC.
Yes, that's what I'm
Mark's
gonna work on.
technique and style is a little bit different than me, so that's why I think it's good for you to see how Mark operates. Mark generally operates not at a teaching. He likes to say, this is how Mark Schaefer does this job, which is sort of like expert mode. I like to say, this is how beginners should do this, or this is what I would do if I were a beginner. So I would do flux and make the jumper with the green UV. So he's most likely, he's probably going to at least put the microscope on. I'm not sure.
I was like, hey, you can see it.
But Mark usually does his demos at this is what it looks like. Oh, you know, your end goal over time.
I seen what I did wrong.
See
with
what I
this
mean?
Mason.
Mark already knows
Jumped
where
it on the
Mason
wrong
is.
spot.
He just goes right to it.
Well, I mean, you guys, I wasn't listening, but
They're good. They're fine for you to do
You know how to
it.
find
For you
it.
to do it.
okay. All right. So then I'm going to get my tools. I do not like using Jess's garbage tools.
Everybody uses different tools. That's how it goes.
Everybody
That's
uses
his
some.
garbage tools.
I've got my little.
He's lucky she was in the bathroom for that.
Oh, he'll still say
She
probably.
knows how I feel about her tools. It's the same reason I won't leave my tweezers up here when I'm done.
Everybody uses their own tools.
Yeah. All right. So, so is this chip bad?
No.
Chip is well, the pad is, the chip is actually okay.
Right. So the chip is fine. Nothing wrong with the chip, right?
Yeah.
So is there any reason why I would need to take that chip off and put a new chip on? No. So-
Access that pad.
Well, right. So I emphasis on put a new chip
Oh,
on.
okay. No, you don't need.
Right. So if you know, my options are I could take this chip off, I could reball this chip, and then I could place my jumper and put the chip back on. That would allow me to use a lower temperature when I'm putting the chip back on, and it would, you know, if I was first starting out, that's probably what I would do.
What?
But
Get a new chip? What are you doing with it?
reballing would let it.
Oh, I see. I see where this is going.
So you know that's what I would recommend that you guys do. And you've already had some
The
practice
reckless
reballing.
method. That's where we're going. Got it.
Yeah. But with experience and experimentation, I've found that I can take this chip off and put my jumper and put the same chip back on.
Why do we need to reball chips when we take them off?
To get them balls back right.
Because how important is it for all those balls to be perfectly even?
Very important.
100%. 11 out of 10. Right? And what about the idea you guys saw on my team that when sometimes you take off a chip, you get oxidation instantly? Well, you can't just put a chip back on top of oxidation, right? So one of the things that Mark likes to do is he likes to say, but what if you can? What if you can take a chip, and this chip, take this chip off, and let's lift it. We are going to lift it straight up. Now, if it comes off at an angle, you're going to get like one ball bleeding into another or something like that. But if you could just magically just suck it straight up, wouldn't that make it so that the balls that stayed down and the balls that went with the chip, if you put it straight back on, they would marry together again and be back to normal and be all even. Yeah. All right. Now, if you did that, some of them are going to come off on the chip, and they're going to leave behind sort of blank pads, and those pads might get oxidized. Would you be able to see that and notice
Yeah.
it? What would it look like?
Darker.
Yes, a dark gray. So you can't just put the chip back on top of oxidation. So what could you do? Just on the gray pads,
Tin it.
just tin it so that it's not oxidized. And spot on the chip, same thing. No oxidation, okay. Can I do this now? Flux? In theory, yes. So Mark, who's a master of efficiency, says, that's going to be the way I'm going to do it. And that's what he's going to try to do right now.
All right.
So that's why it's sort of the little bit of a, you know, recklessy cheater method. But it's totally fine and totally valid as long as you keep in mind it must be straight up. You've got to look at these balls and really think about it, and you can't have any oxidation.
Yeah.
Carry
So I have special tools that I use for doing this. Anytime I take a chip off that I intend to put that chip back on without reballing it, I use these tweezers, which I have made, which you can see have little hooks at the ends, right? Because if you use straight-ended tweezers and you just try to hold on to that chip, you're going to damage the chip. So with these, I can just hook under both sides, and I'm not really grabbing the chip, and that lets me just lift it straight up without having to squeeze the edges of the chip really hard and risk causing damage.
Or almost like you're holding the whole, like shield removal.
Yeah, it is
almost
like shield
you're holding the whole board up by 1 millimeter with your tweezers, and then you're allowing the board to drop down.
So question for you, you only put flux on one side. Is there a specific reason for that?
Yeah, so when I'm applying flux to a chip that's already on the board, I put it on one side rather than all the way around, because as I heat it, I can see that the flux flows from one side to the other instead of trying to flow in from every direction and trapping an air bubble in the middle.
Where is the Canadian refund? Your backup. I know where your backup.
I don't know. I'll look.
God, I hate this thing.
It's not nice. Show them a nice word.
You want to touch the M1, make sure it's puffy, or it's good or bad, just so we can see.
You did it in 3D tools.
So the M1
But it's, there's the backup folder.
pad does not seem too floppy. So should I just skip putting a jumper there?
Yeah.
No,
No? Why not?
because it's gonna get floppy even if it doesn't seem like it now.
Right.
Can you guys see where the jumper should go?
Yeah.
The little micro via.
Where is it?
Up to
On
the
the top
top
right
cap.
there on the corner? Top right, right there between these
Yeah,
gap and then the
yeah,
hat, right?
exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
You gotta make sure it's
It's just
to
a
the
hairline
correct side of the
space,
cap, not the
basically.
ground side. You want to be
So,
on the
what do you
line
use?
side.
Well, we're not attaching to any cap. We're attaching to a via.
Oh,
Right? If you attach your
that's
jumper-
right.
If you attach your jumper to one of these components, then you've just connected it to the wrong thing.
Oh, so this is the one you were saying, tin the via.
Then you
and
definitely
then-
don't have to touch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you do the view? Just touch it a little bit?
Let's find out.
Same way you would to anything, huh? No different.
We're gonna gently massage it until it's tin. We're gonna avoid use of the word scrape.
Yeah.
We gotta get that stuff out first.
Yeah.
We have to make a metal contact.
Yeah, you'd be really tempted to say we're gonna scrape it. But if you said scrape it, that would imply that scraping is a good idea.
Yeah.
And that sometimes we should scrape down to get stuff.
We're going to
Scraping.
gently expose
Yeah.
some copper.
We're gonna
There
gently
you go.
expose some copper. Yeah. But scraping is raping in general. Because people will see things like NC pads and think, oh, I better just scrape down, I can't see the trace. So scraping is a great way to fuck shit up.
I bet I can find some copper under here.
That's it?
I just gently, it's not hard at all.
Yeah, super gentle.
Gently expose the copper that is rubbing the paint off.
Yep.
All you need to, you don't have to get the whole strand of it, you just expose it, jump it over.
So it has to be, so making jumpers is all about surface prep, so tin.
So what if that area was underfilled then?
What if what?
That area was underfilled,
Then what?
then